I'm Theo.
And I'm Juliet.
And this is Apologies Accepted.
We offer an entertaining look at some of the big issues in history by examining public apologies of the famous and infamous.
We're looking at politicians, serial killers, actors, and you.
Send us a public apology you would like to make, and we'll read it on the air and give you a chance to redeem yourself, or just get some guilt off your shoulders.
We're here for you. Once a week, maybe more if you're really, really sorry. Hello world, I am not Juliet.
And I'm not Theo. And this is
Apologies Accepted,
the podcast.
I'm always so
Perfect.
surprised when we do it in unison, and I shouldn't be, because we're so in sync.
One day you'll get bored of it. You'll be like, we need to do this different. I'm bored. So how are you? How's everything going? It's been quite the week since we last got together.
It has been quite a week, and all I can say is America is back. Hello, Biden. All hail Amanda Gorman. Poetry is now in vogue, and what a fucking world.
I'm so relieved. I was, as I was telling you earlier, I keep waiting for there to be some sort of law that no one's discovered before that says that Trump has to be president forever and he's going to come back or something. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop, which is strange.
Yeah, same.
But I'm really, really glad that Biden is president now and that he's started off pretty well with the things that he has done. Very early in his administration, he started off his very first day making some laws, passing some things. Getting some stuff done, not really making laws because you can't do that on your own. But and I imagine he's going to continue to do that and work with all the people that are probably knocking down his door, trying to get everything that Trump did overturned. So good luck, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'm very happy to have Kamala as vice president. We know her from San Francisco and California, so I think she's going to do good things for the country. And happy to have a woman vice president, of course, and a woman of color, no less. So all in all, it sounds great on paper. I'm hoping that it turns out as good as it sounds.
It sounds great on paper. It looked great on television.
It was great on television. Those clothes they were wearing for the inauguration were fantastic.
God,
everyone looked perfect.
Yes.
Just beautiful.
Michelle Obama, thank you,
so
thank you,
hot.
thank you, thank you. All I can say.
I don't know who made her clothes, but they're just fantastic. And they're probably like J. Crew or something, because she doesn't really spend, as much money on clothes as someone like a Trump would. Blech.
Yeah.
But she manages to look better than any of them ever have.
And there is just so much to be grateful for, thankful for in America. And I know that the rest of the world watches what happens here. And there is an impact on the world. American politics, I should say, has an impact on the world. A little bit, yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, kids, are you going to welcome us back onto the playground? I mean, we've joined the Paris Accord, the Paris Climate Treaty. We're back in the WHO, or at least we say we want to come back. And
I think they'll be glad we're back. I think that it's just been a national nightmare for 4 years and a world nightmare for 4 years with the U.S. just being this crazy rogue state, basically. And I think they'll be glad that we're back in the fold, so to speak.
I'm going to hope so, especially because we've picked up listeners in Australia and Germany and Taiwan.
And Taiwan.
Yes.
Hooray. Welcome, guys. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, our little show.
Guys and gals.
I log in daily and look at the numbers to see what's happening and what's going on. And with zero real advertising.
Shout out to Ohio.
Yeah,
and
Delaware. Jesus.
Uh-huh. Isn't that amazing?
Beyond amazing. And then our UK listeners, I'm pretty sure, are just my family. But
that's great, though. We're happy to have them. Hello.
But there seem to be a few more listeners than I have relatives.
And you have family?
Yeah.
Well, we want all of them, though, to call in to
Do
email
not call.
us.
This is a podcast. There is no phone.
You can try to call. You won't be able to email us and tell us about apologies you've received or apologies you've given or want to receive or give that you haven't, that are interesting to you. We want to hear about it.
Yeah.
We're fascinated by folks' apologies. We love to read your apologies, and we'll read some of the more interesting ones online.
Yeah, definitely.
On the air.
Even just what you think, what is an apology? What does it mean to apologize? You don't even have to have a specific one that you want to make. We will take anything that's apology related, which kind of brings us to today's show.
Yeah. Yeah. So we wanted to start today's show by talking about New York in the 70s, I believe, since that's when a lot of this takes place or starts out. New York in the 70s is a very different place than New York today, as I suppose New York in the 40s was probably very different from New York in the 70s. But Theo, you had some points to make.
Yeah, so today we're looking at an artist named Alan Bridge who did something that was rather unique, particularly for the time. And so the show's going to be a little self-indulgent, but then kind of every show is. New York in the 70s and 80s was a very rough place. And let's see, just to kind of begin, I'd like to look at some of the crime statistics in New York. And there is a reason that I'm starting off with crime in New York, right? Mm-hmm. And we will get to Alan Bridge and what's this connection between him and New York and crime. So looking at 1979, there were more than 250 felonies each week in the subway system.
Wow.
Subway
system
system alone.
Do we know how many there are today?
Pardon?
Do we know how many there are today?
Much less. Much less. Yeah, no, I didn't. Okay. I didn't look at today because basically New York is a vastly different city. It's 180 degrees from what it was in the 70s and 80s. So in 79, 250 felonies each week for our international listeners, because all of a sudden I'm obsessed with you. A felony in America is any crime that's over $500. And a misdemeanor is, a crime you might get a jail time for or a fine, but a felony is bad. A felony follows you around for, I think, maybe the rest of your life. I don't know if they can be expunged. Okay, so cool. So a lot of a lot of really bad stuff happening just in the subway system alone. Forget walking along the streets. In 1982, the police force was down to 22,000 officers for 7 million people. That was down from 34,000 officers in 1975. So artists moved to New York City because you could live there cheaply, and a lot of artists were there. Of course, there are also a lot of people with money living in New York as well, so it was really a stark divide between the haves and the have-nots. If you had money, you lived in a very protected bubble, and you just floated from your penthouse apartment down to your car. You didn't have to worry about the 250 felonies being committed in a subway each week. You didn't have to worry about being mugged on the street. You were fine. And
imagine that. Imagine living cheaply in New York, and imagine all that crime. See, when we were there,
yes, right. This is where it gets self-indulgent.
It doesn't seem like it was that bad. And looking back on it, I remember the graffiti in the trains, and I remember it definitely had a little bit of grit to it. But and Times Square was certainly kind of rough. But
Times Square was
But I
bad.
don't remember being afraid at all. And
well, we were 19 years old, so
I don't think we were that old.
Yeah, maybe not.
We were in high school.
Maybe not.
I think we were like 16.
Older than that, but yeah, I don't know what year that was.
Maybe we had to. I don't remember if we were old enough to fly. I don't know if there were rules around that or not.
Well, I mean, we did it, but I mean, this is what I remember. We got on the airplane. We paid for the tickets on the airplane. We got off in Newark and then took a bus to Port Authority, got off at Port Authority. And the whole time I was like holding my breath, waiting for something terrible to happen because all I'd ever heard was like, you will be murdered in New York.
Oh my God.
We got out into the street and there was a guy who came up to me and opened his coat, trench coat, and was like, pot, marijuana. Do you want some coke? Right? I mean,
Really?
yeah. Oh, yeah. For
I don't
sure.
remember that.
I totally
Wow.
remember that. It was not even a 5-second interaction.
Amazing.
Right? And this was the middle of the fucking morning.
I wish New York was still like that.
And we got straight into a taxi, and I think I said something like, "No, thank you."
No, thank you, sir.
No, thank you, sir. And then we walked around the city, and nothing bad happened to us, and we had a fantastic day, and we were very
best
lucky.
day.
And that was probably, I don't know. I mean, it was after 1985, but well before I moved to LA, so somewhere in 85, 86. Maybe.
No, we were in high school, right?
I was in high school, and you were a freshman at college.
Was I? I thought I was in high school too. So that would have been 85.
Probably 85.
Okay.
Probably 85. Okay. So at the height when it was bad, now that we have figured that out, we can say goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening to our show.
This is the Juliet and Theo memory
Yes.
extravaganza. We'll walk you through the moments of our lives.
That'll be our spin-off podcast. Okay, so back to New York. So we were there in 85, and it was great, but it was great because it was gritty. It was very different from the world that we lived in North Carolina. So artists moved to New York because you could live there cheaply, and you could get a lot of space, a lot of loft space. But also you had access and ready access to people with a lot of money who were willing to support your endeavors. Right. And so that just creates this perfect factory of you get a lot of artists together. You get a lot of people being competitive with each other creatively. Hello. In the New York Times on February 25th, 1981, had a headline that declared that 1980 was the worst year of crime in New York City's history. Cops did not respond to gunfire complaints unless someone had been hit. So it's real fucking bad.
Wow.
So bad so that a group of private citizens in 1979 got together and under the leadership of a guy named Curtis Sliwa, who was a 24-year-old high school dropout, formed something called the Magnificent 13, which was a volunteer patrol that rode the subway at night. And they picked the lines that were most prone to crime. And then they had so many people within the community that were so fed up with all the crime, they just joined this volunteer service, and the Magnificent 13 became the Guardian Angels. And so these were the people that ran around with berets and I think T-shirts that said Guardian Angels. And their job was basically just to ensure that nobody was hassled on the subway. This was at a year that the murder rate was 1,800 people murdered.
Wow.
In the course of a single year. So let's see, flash forward to 2021, and Curtis Sliwa, who was born on my birthday, March 26th.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Is running for mayor of New York City now.
He is?
As a Republican.
As a Republican?
As a Republican, yes. He's running against Andrew Yang. Well, I mean, this isn't official. I don't know who's
yeah.
If they're in the primary stages, how the mayoral thing in New York works. I don't know. We're looking at a city that selected Rudy Giuliani, Bloomberg, the other guy. So they don't seem to have a lot of great luck picking mayors. Although I'll say this, Giuliani gets a lot of credit for having cleaned up New York City. And he certainly turned Times Square around, because Times Square used to be, if you wanted sex, you just went to Times Square, right?
Well, but now where do you go for sex?
I don't think you have to go on an app and then you have to pay somebody. No, not pay them. You would have to buy them a drink. There's so much about the grown-up world I don't know anything about.
Times have changed.
I know how nothing.
I like it. I like the old days better when you just went down to Times Square and picked some seamy-looking dude.
You
off
just
the
walked
street.
into a store and you paid for some sex, and then you walked out. That's all you did. You went. But I mean, there were. It was definitely a very grimy, dirty. It was nothing to find a condom in the street in Times Square.
No,
I mean you were lucky.
Or anywhere in New York.
Well,
really.
maybe. But
well, I mean, here today, but we won't talk about San Francisco because it's San Francisco. I love very much. It's got its pluses and minuses. Someday we'll do an apology to San Francisco.
Okay, cool. Can't wait. San Francisco's never done anything bad except for the Alien Exclusion Act and that line about not selling homes to Chinese people that you had in your
right.
That's the only bad thing San Francisco's ever done.
I wish that were true.
So you have a lot of artists flocking to the city because crime is keeping the rents low, and this creates this perfect laboratory for artists to get together and exchange ideas and see each other's work and kind of feed off of each other's. And Alan Bridge moves there in 1977. And this moves us into what we're actually looking at in the apology line. So
Alan Bridge was born on Valentine's Day in 1945 in the Washington, D.C. area. And he went to the University of Chicago, where he studied fine arts. And then he went back to D.C. and became an artist of the Washington Color School movement, which consisted of artists who were interested in color field painting, which was mostly non-representational works using techniques such as color staining and poured paint techniques. So what they would do is they wouldn't use brushes. They would basically pour paint over a canvas and manipulate the paint sort of that way. So Alan himself worked in large format paintings, and he was exhibited at the Corcoran Gallery, among others, in the 1970s. And I read that he created 79 paintings between 1970 and 1977. So however many that is a year, that's a lot. He did a lot of work.
And a lot of good paintings, too. I took a peek at them because, a lot of people throw around the title artist. I'm an artist. My friend's an artist, right? I have a ton of friends who are artists. And some of them are legit artists, and that's how they earn their living. And then some friends just found a tomato can that they really liked and stuck it on a shelf, and they're calling it a piece of art, and now they're an artist. So he was legit, like for real.
He had been trained in painting, yes, and he was I don't know what you call legitimate, but I guess he was legitimate. So he moved to New York, as you said, in 77, I think it was. And sometime around then, he became interested in interactive machines. And one of the pieces that was mentioned in a bunch of the articles I read about him was a piece called Crime Time, which was an interactive machine. So what it is it was a plexiglass box, and you stick your hand in, from what I've been able to glean, you stick your hand in the thing, and you spin the Wheel of Fate, which was part of the art. And depending on the results of your spin of the Wheel of Fate, you either get a marble from the plexiglass box, or you get caught and punished, which means you don't get a marble and you get your hand stuck for 30 seconds. So this machine came from his history of shoplifting. So apparently he'd been shoplifting his entire adult life up until he created Crime Time. And I think he stopped shoplifting after that. But he made it as a form of apology and wanted to give other people the opportunity to apologize as well, which led to his best known piece,
The Apology Line.
Exactly.
Yes. And I want to take just a step back here and kind of look at, sort of tie in this crime in New York with artists and the specific moment in time, and then Alan's piece of art called The Apology Line, which was an answering machine. People would phone in and leave a message about an apology they wanted to make. So what I'm really liking about what happened in the New York art scene around that time is you have this art brut movement, right? This art from the streets. Before graffiti was just graffiti, it was vandalism. And then all of a sudden there's a discussion about, well, graffiti might technically be art. Maybe this is artwork. It's a form of self-expression, right? And so I was really loving this idea of this movement in New York, art brut, as kind of being similar to Baroque art and the Baroque art movement. So within Baroque art, images are direct, obvious, and dramatic, and they try and draw the viewer in to participate in the scene. Depictions feel physically and psychologically real. They're emotionally intense. They're extravagant settings with ornamentation. Slightly different from what's going on here. But it's this idea of taking the viewer into the art, or bringing art off of the canvas and into the real world. So that's kind of this idea of bringing art to the real world is why Baroque art frames are so extravagant. You've got these curls, sort of these Rococo swirls that are coming out from what should be a flat two-dimensional piece of wood out into the real world, making art three-dimensional, basically. And so this idea of Alan using interactive machines, just kind of like, oh my God, that's exactly what was happening here. He's experimenting with a new art form. I mean, this sort of gets into performance, the area of performance art, which I'm not a giant fan of. But so I just wanted to call out that there was something happening here. This is more, because initially when I heard this story, I was like, oh, okay, this is one of those guys who wanted to be an artist and came up with an idea that just happened to work, and all right, great, so he's an artist, right? But no, I was entirely wrong. This was actually really legitimate art. And so in 1980, Alan, who was an accomplished painter, but a little bored with the visual arts, stuck some flyers up around his neighborhood in Tribeca. And the flyer basically was an invitation for criminals. And here I will read, this is the flyer. I won't read the entire flyer. Attention, amateurs, professionals, criminals, blue collar, white collar, you have wronged people. It is to people that you must apologize, not to the state, not to God. Get your misdeeds off of your chest. Call Apology, 212-255-2748. I don't know if that line is still active or not, probably not is my guess.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably. Of course, now that I'm like talking through that, of course it's not. But
well, his wife is still around, so she may have kept it up. I don't know.
Well, they're trying to move it to an online form, and so there is something that's happening here, still with this apology line. So let's see. So he puts the flyer up, and that telephone number that I just rang, call at your own risk or don't call, rang to an answering machine.
Yep. Yeah, and I want to say that I think those flyers are works of art themselves. I think they're really cool looking. I like the font. I like the way he's emphasized the word criminals. He really was. He knew who his audience. He knew who wanted his audience to be. So I think I'm not surprised that he got a lot of calls. And then it has those little flippy things down at the bottom where you tear off the number to take home with you. So it was really cool. And he used an answering machine, as you mentioned, I think, and that was a new technology of the time. So it's amazing to think of an answering machine being a new technology. But I vaguely remember when answering machines were new. I remember when VCRs were new, but it seems like we've almost always had answering machines. Of course we haven't.
My grandmother told me about answering machines, but I don't know about them personally. No, I totally I remember when you had an answering machine, that meant you were rich.
I remember when you had a VCR, I meant you were rich. That's for sure.
Hell yeah.
Those things were really expensive.
Crazy expensive.
Thousands of dollars when they first came out, and that was a lot of money. $1,000 was a lot of money at the time. So he I think the outgoing message for Apology, which was the name of his answering machine service, said the purpose of Apology is to provide a way for criminals and wrongdoers to apologize for their misdeeds in the hope that this will help them turn over a new leaf. At the end of this program, you may record any statement you care to make. So you could call and confess to anything you wanted, and you'd be recorded. You could call and you could listen later, right, to other people's confessions, or you could respond to other people's apologies. And Mr. Apology would respond sometimes, or he would pick up the phone if someone seemed suicidal or interesting. And his wife, Marissa, said that people would just call sometimes to confess their feelings.
And I've got to say, talk about the perfect wife. She was so supportive of this. And
yeah, she was.
The entire project was an intrusion in their lives. I mean, in the old days, in the times before time, when we had answering machines, you dialed the number, nobody answered, and a tape player would play, and you'd hear a beep, and then a cassette tape would play your outgoing message, and then it would stop, rewind, make a noise, and then you would hear another beep, and then you'd hear the voice of the person on the phone talking from the answering machine. So it didn't go into a voicemail box you didn't hear like we have today. An answering machine broadcasts the person's voice as that person was speaking. And, I'm sure if you've probably heard this sentence before, Juliet, I know you're screening your calls. Pick up the damn phone.
Pick up the phone. I know you're there.
Exactly. So Marissa lived with the phone ringing off the hook any hour, day and night, and random strangers' voices filling their home. I'm sorry, I would be moving out. We would be, honey, I'm glad you have your art project. We're going to turn the volume down.
So I don't know if we mentioned this, but he expanded the project to include a series of zines that featured his favorite calls, illustrated with New York outsider art. He did a lot of stuff around the answering machine, the project, but the only time he ever made money was when HBO made a movie based off a book he had written in 1986. The movie was called Apology, which I haven't looked for, but I believe Leslie Ann Warren played his role in that movie.
Yeah, they switched the protagonist because a woman would only be in danger, and so you're more drawn into the film. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and he added 2 additional lines. So all three answering machines were collecting calls around the clock. So he was overwhelmed between the zines and the phone lines. But in 1995, he was writing another book and planning to expand the apology line to the internet, when unfortunately he died in a diving accident.
Yeah, and so not only is it unfortunate, and not to be funny here, because the man was killed, but there's a bit of irony here in that he was killed by a jet skier who knew that they had hit something in the water, because the jet skier circled back to see, did I hit a log? What was it? And saw that they had hit a scuba diver and skied off. And that event was witnessed by 2 people on the beach. So there were 2 witnesses who saw what happened, and the jet skier who went off was a hit and run, basically. And I can only imagine that this jet skier has lived with some guilt. And the weirdness is, would this jet skier be phoning into the apology line to apologize for a hit and run?
Where was this accident?
I don't
remember.
In 95 off of Long Island. And
okay. So they very well could have been flyers out there for the people. People there could have known about the apology line.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think that I know that the skier never phoned into the apology line, because Marissa doesn't mention that. But there is this there is this irony here where Alan is killed by somebody who probably needs to apologize. Not even probably, right? Needs to own up for what they've done. And it's all terribly unfortunate there. And I'm not going to say in defense of the skier, but the skier was not expecting. Now, I don't know if everybody scuba dived over there in that area, but you were not supposed to scuba dive. So Alan was illegally scuba diving. not to say that he deserved what happened, but, just to kind of say, like, this is the situation. Alan was illegally scuba diving, came up, was accidentally hit by a skier who then skied off. I sound like I'm saying he deserved it, and I feel bad.
No, sad story. I mean, it's an unfortunate ending. And he was overwhelmed by the whole thing at the time of his death. So I guess he wasn't in the best place he could have been in at the time. So he was, 50, just over 50, I guess, when he died. So what do you think about the whole apology line? Like, what do you think it means to apologize to unrelated strangers? How does that fulfill any requirement of absolving you, or not absolving you, but any requirement to admit to what you've done and say that you are sorry for it?
Yeah, the whole thing to me is kind of weird. Not weird in a bad judgmental way, just weird there's so many different ways to look at it and approach it. And of course, in sort of a broad spectrum view, that's the great thing about art. That is what art is supposed to do. We're supposed to be able to approach the same piece from multiple different viewpoints and interact with it and have different revelations.
Is that the point of art?
Well, I don't know if there is a point to art.
I don't know.
Yes, that is 100% factually the point of art. And
okay.
I will arm wrestle anybody who says otherwise. I mean, that's a whole other thing. What is art, right? But, as I said, I didn't think that Alan was, when I first heard about the apology line, I was like, that's something one of my lame friends would come up with. And so this sounds lame. And then when there's a podcast out called The Apology Line, where Marissa, his wife, narrates the story of Alan and his time with the apology line and how it consumed his life. It became basically his single focus, his single goal. And so what do I think about what does it mean to apologize into the empty void? I would say, watch me marry two things together, and this is going to be so smart. In the way that art is a creative impulse that allows people to, get their consciousness out into the world, apologizing to another person, I'm not saying that's a form of art. It's not, but it does that same thing where it alleviates a tension within, right? You're making contact with the outside world and you're expressing your feelings. And so we absolve ourselves through I'm waving my hands around, and that does not work on a podcast. So everybody just imagine an incredibly handsome guy waving his hands around dramatically, making points with his fingers. Oh, that's dumb. Okay, so that's sort of what I think about it. I think that, sure, it does something for the person who's apologizing because it's all internal anyway.
I see.
So, yeah, they get something. I listened to 2 episodes, and I'm going to say it's a very well done show. It's put out by Wondery, so of course it's well done. And Marissa is a compelling narrator, and she really does make the experience come to life. And they play some of the apologies that Alan had recorded, and I'm gonna say there are some pretty dark, disturbing voices out there in the world. And the nice thing, this is a total plug, I was listening to it, and there's one about a serial killer who is calling in to talk about how he's sorry that he's a serial killer, and his voice is really creepy, and it just having it inside your head with, of course I listen to everything with my AirPods. I was not happy. And I stood there for a few seconds like, I had this uninvited guest in my head. And, of course, there's also the question of, are these calls legit? Are these people who are calling just to fuck around with somebody? I found this number on the street and I'm going to call it and talk about how I killed a bunch of aliens. Some of the calls sound legit. And the serial killer one, I was having this debate about like, okay, that sounded real legit and gross. Oh my God, and then our show came on autoplay because it was next one queued up. And I was like, I am so happy now. Oh, thank God. Oh, all my worries have melted away. So listen to every episode of our show, everybody. So yeah, I don't know. I was real excited to see that episode 1 of this Wondery podcast was called Who's Sorry Now, which is one of our segment names.
Our segments, yeah.
Look at us having stuff. Now, there isn't an apology in this episode. Nobody has apologized for a hit and run accident. And Alan never apologized for what he was doing, at least not publicly. And so this is...
So maybe we could talk about whether or not we accept the idea of calling a line to apologize.
Ooh, good one.
As he says in his flyer, what does he say? You need to apologize to people. You've harmed people. You need to apologize to people, not to the state, not to God. Get your misdeeds off your chest. Do it now. Is that legitimate? Does that, like, for example, what if the person that you've harmed is dead or otherwise unreachable? Like, you stole a sweater from a shop 40 years ago and the shop is gone now. How do you apologize for that? Can you call 1-800-APOLOGY? And is that legitimate?
Did you read my diary? Because I totally did that. There was this, here's my apology this week. There's this department store. Can I be arrested for this?
No.
Of course, it's all comedy. So is this true? I don't know.
Yeah.
There was this department store called the Broadway, and I owed them like $40 for about 5 years, and I just never paid it. And they basically made me pay it. And this was back in the days when you had to like drive into the store and hand over cash or write a check or whatever. So I went in and I paid it. And on the way out, I was so mad that they made me pay that. And by the way, I was in my 20s. There was a sales rack really close to the front door. As I was leaving, I just randomly reached in and grabbed a shirt and walked out.
Did it fit?
So fucking dumb. Yeah, I wore it for years. And the dumb thing is, I felt entitled to do that, right?
Yeah, that's
because
funny.
this department store was making me pay them the money I owed them. The outrage.
People are funny.
Yeah. So
So
not
that's
one
your
of my
Who's Sorry
proud
Now.
moments. Well, I'm actually maybe we'll say that is my apology. But am I really sorry for that? Broadway went out of business. So, that's bad. If I had just waited another 15 years, I never would have had to pay them the $40. Yeah, it's weird that I still remember how much that was, too. I don't know. So what do you think? Because, there's a couple of things here. One, people do apologize to God all the time, right? And they feel fine about it. They get on with their lives, right? So for somebody to come along and say your crimes are against humans, you don't have to apologize to God, that's kind of saying, this is the only way to really, I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Right.
This is the only way to alleviate your guilt. The state can't judge you. Arguably the state's comprised of humans. So, you are being judged by humans, but whatever, we'll let that one go. And God can't forgive you. Only humans can forgive you. And again, I come back to that point that, forgiveness is just within the self. So, sure.
Well, maybe because, doesn't it matter if the person that you harmed forgives you?
Yes. Okay. But, and I know we've all been there in this kind of a situation where you've done something, you feel real bad about it, and you've hurt somebody's feelings or did something even more than hurt somebody's feelings. And then you apologize to that person and they forgive you, but you don't forgive yourself.
Right. Then what do? Then you call the apology line.
Then you start a podcast.
with all of your tremendous guilt. So yeah, I don't know. I think you need to. I think apologizing to God is obviously a waste of time. Apologizing to the state. I mean, you only do that if you're caught, right? You don't go around saying,
oh hell yeah.
Yeah, I stole something and I'm sorry. You don't open that jar of worms or can of worms, because the way the police and the government is lately, never know where you're going to end up. So yeah, you got to apologize to the person you hurt, and then you got to somehow become okay with it in yourself. If you can, I suppose there are some crimes that maybe you can't become okay with in yourself. Like if you murdered somebody, I would imagine that would be difficult to
murder
rationalize.
and or oh my God, murder and or eat them. No, accidentally kill somebody. Right?
Yeah, that would be harder. I mean, that would be hard, but it would be easier to forgive yourself for accidentally killing someone than for killing them on purpose, I would think.
So in this show, the apology line, there's a guy that calls in who claims that he murdered his mother, and he calls back and repeatedly, and he and Alan, and I'll say this is where I feel like Alan made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
But his art project, so not for me to criticize it, but yes, it is. He got too involved with the callers. He would pick up the phone, and hats off for talking with somebody who is depressed. Right? That great. Yeah, absolutely do that. But maybe not do that. Maybe, maybe have an outgoing message for like, if you need to talk to somebody, here's a therapist, right?
Yeah, please call 911 or whatever.
Yeah. So Alan was not a therapist. And one of his neighbors was a therapist, and she would come over and listen to the calls, and he would talk to her a lot, right? And she would offer him guidance. But I think her main point was, Alan, don't play therapist and don't do this. And I'm not saying he was playing therapist. I'm saying he just got too drawn into his own projects.
Yeah.
And that created emotional turmoil for him, and it consumed his life. And, that happens. I mean, Picasso? No. Oh, my God. Van Gogh was consumed by his art, right? But, I mean, was he really consumed by his art, or was he mentally ill? He was mentally ill.
Why not both?
Because it can only be one or the other for the point that I am making. Otherwise, it defeats everything that I was trying to prove, and then I'm wrong. Oh, by the way, this is very late correction, but for faithful followers of the show, you may have heard me say that John Updike wrote The Jungle, and it was not John Updike, it was Upton Sinclair. Now,
and we knew that.
This
it
is
just came out of
world
your mouth
that my husband gets to live in. Ready? I wasn't really wrong. I was right. It's more right that it was Upton Sinclair. And what happened was I had up in my brain and went to John Updike, who was born in Reading, Pennsylvania. Hi, that's the town I was born in. So once again, everything comes back to me.
You were born in Reading?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to do with it. It just happened.
Well, I was born really close to there, so that's weird.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I was born in Philadelphia.
Oh, I don't know how close Reading is to Philadelphia.
It's pretty close.
Well,
so
look at that.
Who knew? And we met in North Carolina, and now we live in Texas and California.
Yes, right.
The world is crazy. All right, so it's time for Who's Sorry Now. This is episode? No, this is the segment.
This is the segment and the episode.
About who's sorry now. Each of us will discuss an apology that we have received or would like to have given, or something along those lines during the past week. So, Theo, what's your apology for this week?
I have one for the art world, and I'm really sorry, and I know better than this. So, I would like to apologize to the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Wow.
Not because I stole something, because that, no, because there was a Monet exhibit, and this was in the 80s in New York, and I was there at the exhibit on a date, and I was really in love and very new, and the world felt fresh and exciting. And being in New York in this amazing museum was awesome. And the paintings were just nailed to the walls. And there was a little velvet rope that was like not even a foot away from the painting. So you could get up real close. And those brush strokes and the texture were so inviting that I touched the paint to see if I could feel what Monet felt when he painted I don't know what painting it was. And
what happened?
A security guard came right up to me. It was like, "Sir, you are not supposed to touch the art." And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. And I know that. And I'm so sorry. Yeah.
That's not so bad.
Well, I mean, it's not so bad today, but my finger acid gonna eat right through that painting, and it's gonna burn a hole through the most important work of art of all
Those
time.
are all fakes. They're fakes.
That makes me feel a lot better. You're good at this. You're right. Those bitches tried to trick me and make me feel guilty.
Real?
I should have ripped the painting off the wall and walked out.
You're telling me that they're going to take these real masterpieces and hang them on a wall, and where anyone can go out to them and just touch them? That's just crazy talk.
1989, maybe. I mean,
yeah, no, I don't know. I think they still do the same thing with the Monets. They don't really, but they keep you farther back than they used to, for sure.
Well, I taught them a valuable lesson, and I preserved art history. So
can't trust
I'm
Americans.
a hero. Hooray for me. Yeah. And, that's not the only time I fucked up in a museum. The other time was I sat down in the middle of an exhibit, of a Warhol exhibit, and it was not my fault because it wasn't roped off, and it was a chair with a coffee table, and I was tired. And there was a magazine, and this was at MoMA. There was a magazine on the coffee table, and I picked it up, and I was bored as fuck because it was a Warhol exhibit, and I get pop art. It's fine. It's great.
Right.
But, and I had spent 15 minutes watching his 24-hour movie, The Empire State Building. And so that's how fucking bored I was. But my friends were all fascinated, right? And we were going to be there forever. So I sat down and I picked up this magazine, and I was like, I can't believe MoMA can't afford a magazine past 1967. This is ridiculous. And, it was an exhibit.
Did you get in trouble? Did you get thrown out?
I didn't get in trouble, but a security guard came up to me and said, "Sir, you're not allowed to sit there." And I was like, "Okay, you should have some ropes." Those are the only two museum fuck-ups that I've ever done that I can think of. So
I can't think of any art fuck-ups, but I want to argue with you about something.
Okay.
So when you said that some of your friends are legitimate artists and some of your friends are not legitimate artists, I'm going to stand up for your illegitimate artist friend who has a can of a can of tomato paste that they put on their shelf and they say that it's art. I'm going to say that that's probably art, depending on how they did it. But if they're
you mean if it's too far left of center, it's not art, but if it's dead center, it is art?
No, I mean if it actually expresses something, it's art. To me, art is the desire to express something and the ability to do so, right? And hopefully the ability to communicate whatever it is you're expressing to other people. That's what I think right now, this very minute, art is. And so I'm thinking that probably all your friends who call themselves artists, maybe many of them really are. So
a lot of my friends are real artists, right?
But maybe the ones that you wouldn't automatically call real artists are also artists. I did it again,
and you're right. And I called them real artists, but it's like, so for me, a real artist has a plan and a purpose and I don't know, an impulse. And some of my friends, who I love some of my friends, right?
Sure.
I love some of my friends.
That's big of you.
Hey, well, yes, it's true. Here it comes. I love all of my friends, but some of my friends. I had lots of sleep last night. I feel fine. I don't know what problem with my brain. But yeah, I don't know. Some of my friends know what I think about their artwork. We'll leave it at that. Like they know that I think it's BS, and because yeah, I don't know. But it's that thing of like you walk into a museum and there's modern art, and it's like it's a paint can on the center of the floor. Okay, great. There's intention, there's purpose, there's planning. It's art. I'm not going to say that it's not art. But, okay, I'm not going to pay you $1,500 for it, though.
Yeah, you don't have to. You can just enjoy it. Or not, as the case may be.
And that's the bullshit thing about art, because all of a sudden by the way, I love art. Like, I'm totally into art. But that is the bullshit thing about it, right? Because it's like anything that elicits a response is art. Okay, well, does nature make art? Because scenic views are beautiful and they elicit responses. I have gasped many times at a beautiful sunset.
But nature doesn't have an impulse to create art.
Oh, you're good at this.
I'm just saying.
You're right.
And probably there are a lot of people who've said that nature is art. So I don't know. I'm not educated in any of this philosophy of art, so I just make things up as I go.
Well, you are educated in the philosophy of art, because that is day one, lesson one. Make it up as you go along, and then just fight with people.
Pretend you know what you're talking about. So I actually have an apology for you, which I just remembered, which is going to be very difficult for me. So please be kind. I remember, this is art related too. I remember when I was young, and I'm going to say that I was young, and that's why I did it. Or that's why I handled it the way I did, or whatever it is I'm trying to say. You sent me some poems that you wrote one time.
I don't remember that at all.
You don't remember that at all?
No.
You sent me some poems that you wrote, and I sent them back to you
with corrections?
Edited.
Oh, that's great.
Which was horrible, A. And B, I really liked the poems in the first place. And C, who am I to correct art? Who am I to correct poetry? The nerve of me to do that.
I don't know about any of that. I have zero memory of that.
And thank God.
So I guess...
so I apologize sincerely for doing that.
Accepted, but I mean, brava. I am going to say that is a major move. I like that. If I got that, I would laugh so hard. That's probably what happened. I got it and I laughed so hard.
But you never sent me any poetry ever again, and you never sent me anything you've written ever again. And good for you for not doing it, because why would I deserve to see it?
I sent you a book, and you came back with very nice things. And the book writing started after the poetry stuff. So for sure, I've sent you other stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. No, I just haven't written anything in 1,000 years.
I see.
Have you seen my thesis?
No. What was it on?
Oh, wow. Let me tell you all about it. How much time do we have? All day? Great.
We have plenty of time.
So, Absolved. I think that's super funny.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank God.
Yeah. Don't remember it for a moment. And if it had
I've been carrying this
me,
around for years. This is. I have felt bad about this since like the minute after I did it. Like I put it in the mail and I thought, oh shit, what did I just do? And then it was too late and I didn't know what to do. So
no, well, this is the. And we're near show's end, so I don't want to introduce another fascinating topic. But weirdly, another friend of mine apologized for correcting my poetry. No, another friend of mine apologized for guilt she'd been carrying around for years and years and years. When I once upon a time had a long-term relationship, and his best friend became friends with me, and we had our own friendship outside of his friendship with her, right? So, always loved and respected and thought she was amazing and still do, right? Mm-hmm. And so my boyfriend and I broke up, my long-term, and I really respected the way that she handled it.
Great.
People weren't quite sure what to do, like, oh my God, whose friend do I have to be? Can I mention, we'll call him Mr. C. Can I mention Mr. C in front of Theo? Or can I mention Theo in front of Mr. C? Or I'm going to have dinner with Mr. C tonight. So breakups can get goofy, as we all know. And so it's been 20 years. And my friend and I were pre-pandemic, their world before masks and sitting with people. She said, "Hey, I want to apologize to you for the way that I handled your breakup. I could have been a better friend, and I should have been a better friend."
Oh.
And I was like, "Oh my God, are you kidding? That never once occurred to me." So, and I could tell just from the way her body posture and everything that this was like a moment she was dreading. She was so afraid of not so much my response, but this guilt, right, that she'd been carrying. And so odd that like it never occurred to me ever. I always thought she handled it excellently. And then here you are carrying around this guilt, and it's like, this is a newsflash to me. You should correct every email I ever send you should just send back a correction. I will always laugh.
But I remember one time wrote me a love letter, and I sent it back to him with corrections. And that was a complicated situation, but
yeah, it was.
But that was I did that to be mean, frankly, and I did not do it with in your situation to be mean at all. Yeah, it turned him gay. But I was not trying to be mean with your poetry. I was trying to be helpful.
Honest to God, I don't remember it at all, and I save things.
I'm glad it didn't scar you for life.
I may still have them.
That would be funny.
Because I do. I mean, I save cards and letters. So I've got a box of them, but.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
So that's it, I guess. We don't have an apology to accept or decline, absolve, or condemn.
Everybody is absolved.
Everybody is absolved of all of your
It's a new day
crimes.
in America. It's a new day in apologies.
So thank you, everybody. All of you in all the far-flung areas of the world. We're happy to have you listening to us. Please keep listening. And we'll talk to you next week.
Yes, and remember, you have nothing to be sorry for.
That's right.
I'm trying to think of an headline for our podcast, and it doesn't work. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Apologies Accepted, the podcast.
You can find links to the articles and the sources in the show notes.
To submit an apology or find out more, visit us at apologiesaccepted.net, where you can also find our merchandise.
We're on Twitter at Apologies Accepted.
And on Instagram at apologies.accepted.
You can support our important work at Patreon.com/Apologies Accepted.
And fuck Facebook.
Bye.
Bye.